Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Monoxide Podcast. I'm your host, Harris, AKA Monoxide, man of many automotive aspirations. And I'm here with my, it's so weird looking at you, co-host, Dan, Mr. GunnItGarage.
Yeah, we are usually sitting next to each other, so.
Yeah, usually it's shoulder to shoulder. I didn't realize I grow out your beard. Whatever.
No.
Well, this is episode 100. I think it's, we've come quite a long ways. Me further than you because you hopped on episode 55. But we wanted to do something a little bit more different, special, top sort of 10 things. We'll see if we even get to 10. The things we've kind of learned along the way. I mean, we've talked to so many guests. Obviously, this being episode 100 and the first episode just kind of being a test run. I think it's technically 98. But I don't know, man. We've done kind of some cool stuff over the year.
Yeah, well, I think when they do like TV series, they still count the pilot, right?
I guess they do, don't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, today I'm drinking Ghost. I'm trying all these different energy drinks because I'm forgetful.
It goes down like battery acid, but it's pretty good.
It's definitely like battery acid. Well, did you ever see that meme yet where it's like, forget energy drinks, I need to chew on a power line? But yeah, today we're just going to kind of talk about some of the things that we've learned. I mean, whether we end up getting to 10, we'll see what happens. But given the variety of guests we've had from 4-cylinder, actually 3-cylinder, we've even gotten down to 3-cylinder people, which are weird people, but
yeah. Well, then there was that that one really threw me for a loop when we had the Austin and
the Cobalt guy.
Yeah, I was like, that turned into a Cobalt episode when we thought we were gonna have Honda guys on, or Honda lady and guy.
We talked about the Honda for all of like 5 minutes at best, and the rest was like finding out like, oh my god, the Cobalt, the LSJ is actually a platform worth considering.
Yeah, to each their own.
Yeah. But no, so like obviously we wanted to have Sean here because it would have made sense because he was a part of the first 45, but unfortunately timing didn't work out. We just started kicking out episodes like crazy, and he'll be in town next month for something else, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna have to do 100 without you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I think I'll try to draw on my memory from the first 45, but think about everything we've done over the last year. We've gone to SEMA, we've gone to PRI, we've gone to Texas 2K, we've done the Speed Summit, which Speed Summit 2.0 is coming up here soon, so make sure to check that one out.
Yep.
It was your first Power Cruise this year as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Our first one was our first one. Then whatever else we've done, so many. We did the Ultimate Streetcar Challenge. I mean, there's a lot to recap in the past year. We've talked to so many various people.
It's plural for people,
it's
right?
okay.
Yeah.
I promise if you're this far in the episode, it gets better in 15 minutes when this caffeine kicks in. I don't know. Does anybody come to mind that was a favorite of yours? Or some favorite episodes?
I don't know. I like the ones that we do on like when we're out traveling, you know, when we're PRI. Well, I didn't do the NESEMA ones with you, although I was there in the background.
Spectating?
Yeah, I was just there.
You got me lunch.
Yeah, right.
I still to this day.
I was just your assistant at that point.
So for a little bit of background, a lot of people don't see the background of what happens here. Like the conversations that happen before and after are just as fun as what's on the podcast. The SEMA one, I had to do 4 in one day. That was that last day, the Friday. I picked the random hallway, which a good bit of people saw, episodes 48 through 51. And I couldn't leave. I'm not going to leave my gear here. You never know who's going to take it. You know, There's a million people here. So I was like, Dan, can you just bring me lunch? So you and Mal, actually, it was probably Mal. One of you fed me.
It was her idea to check in on you, and then we went from there.
But I have a small list here that I kind of put together last night just to kind of go back. Again, it's really hard to recap all of the lessons, but the number one that kind of stuck out to me is all cars suck and all cars are amazing. Right? Like that's kind of like the constant thing we hear, like for the rotaries, for example. Oh my God, rotaries suck. And then we get someone like Antonio on. Well, it's actually not bad if you do this, and this.
Right.
Or like the Cobalts. These are the freshest episodes in our mind. So we're obviously going to draw on that. But like, again, a decent platform, if you maintain it early enough, if you run it to 10,000 miles, it's a problem.
Yeah. There's not any one platform that's perfect, right? We'd like to all boast about whatever we're into that is the best. I mean, obviously, I think the Coyote platform and everything Ford's doing is pretty awesome. But everything has its faults, right? There's no one perfect solution.
And that's the one thing. In the last 100 episodes, you really cannot pinpoint any car that's perfect. Now, granted, there's some cars that are well-rounded in every regard. Like, for example, we just had, well, technically today we posted the Nth Moto one. The Viper's kind of like a one-size-fits-all. It's like you could boosted. You could just NA build it. Same thing applies to like Corvettes for the most part, outside of a single cam deal. But there's so many well-rounded platforms. There's a lot of people we didn't get to, right? Like obviously we want to get some more Evo people. We want to get some more Subaru people. Off-roading is kind of on the to-do list here in the near future. But I think, what's kind of feedback you've gotten from people?
Well, I will. I don't know. People keep telling us that we're doing a good job. I mean, that's what I keep getting across. I'm running into people now at car shows and stuff. They're coming up and saying hi to me, which is kind of a whole new thing for me. And telling us that they love the show. So that's kind of fun. But I will say, if you were going off of lists of things we've learned, my number one is the fact that I'm not the only one that breaks shit. So that makes me feel really good when people come in. Please, when you're on, tell us your horror stories, because it makes me feel so much better about mine.
That is one thing that we've learned is like, well, how many motors did you go through on this car? The orange car behind you.
This orange one behind me here, it's on its third right now. It had its original engine, and then a nice built one that also didn't work out. Mm-hmm. So we're third time around here, though. It's been an expensive learning curve, but I think we're finally getting her dialed in.
I think one of the other things, so number two for me, technically, outside of all cars being amazing and crap at the same time, there's a lot of controversy. Like, for example, like oil pump gears. Like if we go back to like the Mustang conversation, it's like, you know, when we had Bowen on, it's like, man, that got shared to one of the, I think it was a draggy group, and it was like 200 comments on the Facebook post. Did you see this one?
No, I didn't.
Oh, dude, it was crazy. Like, it was like 200 people commenting. Like, well, first of all, the guy that posted it, he's like a big Beamer guy. So he was just off a rocker, like, see, you Mustang guys, blah, blah, blah. It was absolutely hilarious. But yeah, we saw that a lot too. It's like, oh man, if you just do these supporting mods, you save yourself so much stress down the line. And that seems to be like buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to call that lesson.
It's cheaper insurance when it comes down to things. Like most of these things, people, yeah, sure, there's people getting by without having to do certain things. I mean, like we said, everything has its weak point, right? There's flukes in every bunch, right? Like you can get by a long time. Maybe your driving style is different. Maybe you're not bouncing it off the rev limiter as much as some other people. Mm-hmm. So then you're going to get by just fine. But if you think about what it costs versus what it costs for rebuild, some of us just like to be, you know, some people are riding around without insurance on their car. Some of us want to have that safety net. So it's kind of a up to you situation.
And then you kind of get in these weird situations like junkyard motors, right? Or cheap motors, right? Like one of the cars that I'm cross shopping at the moment for potentially getting in the future, it's the GME T4, right? So the Hurricane motor from Stellantis / Dodge, whatever. And it's like $2,000 for a motor. Like if anything goes, like, all right, cool, not too bad. Like some people are willing to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. Yeah. And if you have the junkyard availability, it definitely helps a lot. Like especially like, you know, go get stuff from Copart. Well, you know what was cool? I'm gonna jump into a third one for me as well. When you have people that are willing to push the limits, right? So think of your Tim Romans, episode 66. Then you got Nth Moto, 98. And then, not caffeinated enough to think of more numbers, but...
Well, you know all the numbers. I never know. I'm
Dude,
like, I'm going to have this guy on. Yeah.
I'm slipping a little bit. Like the 80s was a fuzzy time for me. I'm sure the 80s were a fuzzy time for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. But dude, when it comes to like innovating, like there's so many people that just had to try stuff.
Yep.
You know, it's like... It costs money, it costs time, but there's people that will spend years developing their car or a part or just like, it still blows my mind that he has Toyota parts in a Mustang for Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, which he's not far from here, is he? He's
he's out in your neck of the woods, somewhere out in South Metro, I thought.
I could have sworn, I could have sworn he was up here because his cars were on your lift.
Well, he came here to... So if you can see behind me here, Tim and I think we touched on this in the episode, but I'm one of the few people that had an S197 and an S550 and a lift for him to check out what he needed to check out. So he made a post in a Minnesota Mustang page. Mm-hmm. I hit him up, and then that's where our relationship started.
And that's one of the things, if we wanted to throw in, you're just going to call this 4.1. I don't know. We're just going to, we'll see. We'll see how many things we can reminisce on here. That's kind of like the universal language of car guys, though, right? Like you can never meet anyone ever. You see their car, you're instantly best friends. Like we saw this on rallies all the time, too.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of people that kind of gave me flack for, rallies are so much. You can just go do a track day for blah, 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 blah. I think the difference between a rally and a track day is the rallies are a lot more relaxed than a track day. Like if you look at the Optima Ultimate Streetcar Challenge that we did, well, you did, I pit crewed.
You were still busy though too. I mean, it was you know between trying to get content and do stuff, it was intense.
But it's social. Don't get me wrong. Like camps help each other and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have like a designated social period, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
Whereas on a rally, like you have these group dinners or like, dude, you were doing, that sort of deal. But if you're doing like a full track weekend like that, I feel like you don't meet as many people. I don't know. Am I wrong on that?
I think you meet people, but like you said, there's not as much time to sit around and jack jaws or whatever you want to call it, because you're
jaws.
well, I was gonna say bullshit, but I didn't want to, trying to clean it up a little bit.
I'm trying.
Yeah. You have like maybe an hour or two in between events, and then you're usually going over your car. Or, we did a lot of just leaning against the trailer and talking for a little bits at a time. But you only get so much time in between certain, especially an event like that. It's not all one thing. You're doing several things in one event. So
it's a different type of intensity.
Yeah.
Right. Like rallies are intense. Don't get me wrong. You do an 8 or 12 hour day like we will be doing next month. I guess we're doing 2 rallies next month, but like. It's a different, like, it's like you can still socialize while going on the street.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you have that designated social time, like you said. So usually at the end of a day,
it sounds like prisoners, by the way.
I know. Yeah, this is yard time.
Yeah, yard time.
No, you roll into your hotel, and I've been on rallies where you don't get in till 9 o'clock at night, and that's kind of it sucks, because to be honest with you, we want to beat on our cars all day. We want to be done by 5, 6 o'clock. We want to freshen up in our hotel room, and then we want to go. It's time to go have some drinks and hang out with some people. You're talking about things you ran into during the day. You're talking about cars, builds, things like that. And to be honest with you, that's how you and I got hooked up. I mean, I've got lifelong friends now that I've come from rallying. So,
oh, dude, like, I mean, you definitely fall into that category, and especially like, so we have a lot of new listeners. I told this story maybe, I want to say 50 episodes ago, but the reason that Whiplash Rally, which was kind of the inception of the podcast, and we can get into that, but the reason Whiplash Rally even existed was because of you. And it was strictly because at the end of Venom Rally, before I parted ways with my former business partner, you won first place on points because you got to test drive a GT3. We were calling audibles for points. And on rallies, we used to have competitions for points and all that. And I threw one of the audibles like, oh, test drive a supercar. And we looked at each other like, me and, Doug at the time, my partner, and we looked at each other like, is a Porsche even a supercar? And I'm like, yeah, but it's an RS. If it was GT3, it'd be a different story. Yeah. But it was an RS, and you managed to just drive it around a lot. And I'm like, it counts.
Yeah.
So that pushed Mark, and I know Brett's listening to this, his co-pilot. He's for sure listening to this. They were fuming. They're like, my favorite part was you smiling and then looking over just a few feet and Mark going like this. And obviously when you accepted your trophy, I was like, oh, man, like I need to keep doing this. Like even because I was already made up on kind of moving on from the rally life. But when I got back to the cities and I gave myself 2 days to think about it, I was like, oh man, but then you got guys like, damn. And I'm like, and that's what threw me into a spiraling debt, which I pay off next month, by the way.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Dude, you know what? This is kind of more of an advice lesson to anybody. I know I'm on the younger side of things, but I know that there's a lot of people that kind of let their dreams die at an early age. Whether that's in their teens, 20s, whatever. I'm really glad I swung for the fences on that, even though I lost 20 grand on that fucking thing. I gotta say, I definitely learned how to work.
Yeah.
I learned what didn't work. And that was the best education I've got. Granted, I am college educated, allegedly, but that was the biggest swing and a miss I've had in my life. And it's kind of cool that I came back. Like, obviously, this podcast is supposed to be the Whiplash podcast. Here's a fun story. This is going to be a little bit of storytelling time, too, as well. So I used to have a co-host, Chaz, which you guys may remember. I think it was episode 26 or 27, when we had Chaz and Jess on from NutriShop out of Maple Grove. Get your subs. Not sponsored. But literally not. But point being, it's like I was driving all the time up to NutriShop to host the podcast. And we got up to 8 episodes, and I eventually once a number of people just had to keep rescheduling and flaking, I'm like, you know what? I'm driving 40 minutes for this deal. I'm done. The rally's cooked. The podcast is not as soon to follow. I just took some time off. And then when the year turned, I don't think this is a New Year's resolution. I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm more of a mindset of like, why not just do it today? But I was like, I'm not all in on monoxide, right? And that's kind of where the podcast came back. I'm like, you know what? And my dad was telling me for years, why are you doing all these other stupid names? Just stick with the one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best advice I got that I wish I kind of took sooner. But I don't know. I think we're kind of going off track here. But yeah, no, like this whole podcast.
I mean, it has to do, we're 100 episodes in. I mean, you got to talk about where it started.
That's fair.
You've gone over some of this before, but we've got, subscribers have gone quite a bit up since this whole thing's been rolling. So you've got people maybe not even heard this story.
That's true. It has been about 1,000 a week lately, which is wow. Facebook is growing even quicker. But I don't know, man. It's when it comes to, oh, that's right. You were actually supposed to be my original co-host for Monoxide. I don't think a lot of people know this story either. So when I was like, all right, I want to get back into a podcast, and I immediately identified that my weakness is I'm not technical.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I go as far as doing my oil change on my car, switching out my wheels every winter, and that's as far as it goes, right? And I want to learn more, but it also comes, or work on my car more, but at the end of the day, like, I need to remember that it's a daily, and I don't have a plethora of cars to choose from. If I have to get somewhere, I'm screwed. You know what I mean?
You're right.
Because there's a lot of people that figure stuff out the day before, like they take apart their whatever, but then they have to get to work the next day, and now they pull 12 hours. I don't want to subject myself to that. I know I'm a bad person when I'm stressed, and that's why I keep myself within a certain tolerance level. I don't throw myself into that. Now, obviously, if I had a second car, I'd obviously do all that fun stuff.
Well, you still have problems like when you lock your keys in your car at midnight.
So this is God, there's so many ways we could take this. But no, back to you being the original co-host, right? So I immediately saw that weakness in myself. I'm like, oh man, I'm not very technical. I like being able to bounce off of someone because I did enjoy that with Chaz. Now, obviously, could I have done it with him again? Yes, but I didn't want to drive 40 minutes to do that. I needed a location to do it. And then I was like, well, I don't want to drive to Hudson, even though you're one of the more technical guys I know. I obviously have valued your friendship over the years. And like, we talked, but not nearly as much as we do now. So then I was like, an hour is just, it's not going to work. I don't want to do it at my house because I feel like it didn't have that vibe.
Right.
And then Sean was he's one of my oldest friends in the car scene, right? Like when he had his 392 Challenger, he's the one that taught me how to drive manual. Technically my friend Sandra showed me, but Sean really like let me drive for a prolonged period, not just in a parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
But, he had a great space for it. He was only 7 minutes away, 3 if I run a stoplight. And I was like, man, he's technical. He can kind of fill in the gaps. And that's why I hit him up one day. I'm sure the text is somewhere in my phone. Like, do you want to co-host my podcast? Or however I asked, and we just started going. And like, I didn't want to wait to have our first guest. I was like, let's do a test run with these stupid GoPros. It took us like 7 episodes to get video because the GoPros kept dying. Horrible camera in every, like, they're just useless. Like, unless you're constantly doing something active, like, skiing, or it's on the outside of a car, getting that, wind dissipation or the heat, it's a worthless camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously Sean, he moved to California for another venture, and he will be back in Minnesota later on, which, we may come see him on the show time to time. He's not getting his job back, but
sorry, Sean.
What am I supposed to do? Kick you out now?
Yeah.
Come on. It's like, imagine adopting a kid and being like, no more.
Yeah.
Like before they turn 18, right?
No, but I can see him being a regular guest. Sean's great, and it wasn't working for me at that point either. Whatever. I also decided to, right around the same time, we were both kind of deciding to full send. So I also was like, okay, I really like the car community. I've been kind of just in the background for a long time, showing up here or there to an event randomly throughout the year. And so then I decided, you know what? I really like this. I'm going to go a little more full bore. So at the same time, I decided to send it, and then everything kind of, Sean moved, and then we just kind of went from there. Everything fell into place.
That is true, isn't it? Right? Because you guys were just like thinking of moving further into the sticks,
Yep.
Ooh, excuse me. This ghost is
It's a little bubbly.
It's a bit bubbly, yeah. But yeah, it just kind of worked out in that regard. I just timing wise, because like that kind of lit a fire under my ass, right? Like I forgot what it was called. It's like a specific terminology. Like whatever bad can happen will.
Yep.
Or however you phrase it, somebody's gonna correct me on it. But I was like, oh man, like Sean's gone. I'm like, well, I gotta find a location. And this is where we just finished doing our podcast with Trey, and I think he was the first person we told too that Sean's gonna be leaving the show. And he's like, well, my dad's got 3 offices at Ratified. Keep in mind, like I've had all of like 2 or 3 conversations with Rat at this point, right? Like even though he's my neighbor, like I didn't know him like that, right? And I am so prideful, and I think you are as well. Like we don't like asking people for stuff, right? So I approached Rat about it, and it's like he had this space, and there was a few iterations of the studio. We kept improving it. And I did a few solo ones. Obviously, my first solo one was Sam from Minnesota Performance. And that was the most nervous I ever was, by the way. Like,
oh, really?
Well, like, before we get too far into the show, I wanted to take a moment to talk about Raise a Hood. If your daily driver is having issues, aka your beater you got off Craigslist, Raise a Hood's telemechanics and AI tools can help you diagnose and solve the issues you may be dealing with for a fraction of the cost. All you have to do is add your car to the Raise a Hood garage to get started. You can provide the AI tool, also known as Gus, with the specifics of the issues you're having, and it'll help you narrow down what the culprit is. It's a great way to bounce ideas off of to figure out what actually might be the problem. You could then select from a variety of solutions to explore the cost and difficulty of doing the repair yourself versus taking it to a shop. If your car doesn't have detailed solutions yet, that's totally fine. Just go ahead and add your car to the garage for free, and that'll let the Raise a Hood team know what to focus on as they continue to develop and grow. If you want to try out Gus or chat with a telemechanic, go to raiseahood.com and add your car to the garage to get started. Use code MONOXIDE-FREE for a 1-month free subscription, or Monoxide20 to save 20% on a 30-minute call with a telemechanic. Let's get back to the show. A lot of you guys know Ratified Motorsport for their RS3, TTRS, 1,000 horsepower hairdresser car builds, but they are so much more than that. From basic maintenance on an R35 GTR to, cute little Volkswagen GTIs like mine, they're able to do a little bit of everything. Whether it's your basic maintenance or an intake and a tune or even a full-blown build, be sure to go to ratifiedmotorsport.com to get yourself booked today, and I hope to see you guys at the shop. For a number of reasons, right? Him being a technical guy, me not being very technical, but we did 2 hours, by the way. And we didn't know each other. That's the thing. When you know someone, you could talk for hours, like we're about to do. But Sam and I have barely talked, and he actually thought that Sean was going to be there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he told me after. He's like, okay. And it's kind of weird, like having 2 guys in a room, and it's like, it's very intimate, right? Our studio's, it's pretty snug. So it's like, especially the old setup with the table, like you were really like in each other's face. But it was, I forgot where I was going with that. Damn. I was thinking about the intimacy. The intimacy got me confused, hot and bothered.
Yeah, I got you all excited. Yeah, you were saying that you were just a little nervous going into it because you don't have. It's kind of nice to have that if you like what just happened to you just now to have somebody else to pick up the slack, right? To jump in where you need to, and I think you and I complement each other well in that regard as we been doing this now for, man, I know how many episodes it is, but how long has it been?
It's gotta be.
We're going on a year pretty quick because it was not long after SEMA.
Well, your first episode was Mike Johnson. That was 55, right? So, that was just before PRI because PRI was 58 and 59 with Kamil, 59 and 60 with Kamil and the Drag and Drive guys, Drive Repeat, what they're now rebranded as. Those guys are crushing it, by the way. I'm excited to see what they do. We were bouncing some ideas off. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing with content creators. It's just a bandwidth thing. Like, how much can you really do? It is a full-time job, I've noticed. But yeah, so you're coming up on 9 months or something like that.
What? Yeah, so it would have been right in between SEMA and PRI.
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm glad that it kind of worked out that way. Obviously, the commute to the Ratified studio isn't the easiest, but it is cool that we're kind of going from shop to shop and seeing their experiences. And every shop is kind of the same, but they're different. They're all hot.
Yeah.
Which we're okay with.
Well, we're finding out that adding AC to a shop is quite expensive.
That's kind of standard. Dude, and like, I get it from their perspective as business owners. It's like, well, we can invest in these other things that actually make us money. That leaf just confused me. I thought a bird hit your car for a second.
It would be the first time.
Yeah, but there's so many more events that we want to attend. Obviously, we're trying to break out beyond. We kind of fell into like the drag racing side of things, with Texas 2K being one of my favorite events to attend to. And, obviously have roll racing with Power Crews. But I think we're trying to attend more and more. Like, we're trying to get a variety of people within the car enthusiast space. Like, I almost want to get somebody that's like in the tractor space, right? Like, I want to talk to like a John Deere mechanic at some point. Like, because like that's cool too. I don't know about you, right? Like, I'm a suburban kid, right? I stood under my first combine a few weeks ago when I was filming for Buckin Energy. And I'm like, this thing is freaking huge. It's like a house, dude. Like, it's almost as big as your house over here. Like from that back portion. I'm like, dude, this thing is freaking huge. Like,
no, they're huge. I grew up in southern Minnesota as a young kid, and the farmer across the street, I used to ride in the combine with him all the time when he was out planting or
that's cool.
Harvesting. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But yeah, that's not a cheap thing either. I mean, you're talking combines are hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, and apparently, like, repairing old ones is easier than buying new ones. Like, it just, like, literally rebuilding it from the ground up from the chassis.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Sean coming back, though, I do think at some point, I'm not sure how I want to structure it, but for example, if you look at Joe Rogan, which, if you look at his, like, Protect Our Parks series, I do want to bring something like that for us. I just want something that's going to have the level of consistency, and it's going to be more of, like, a silly, goofy sort of deal rather than, interview style, where it's just, four dudes in a room. I really should rephrase that, but like, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So at some point we'll have something like that. I think Sean will be one of the series that we'll collab with. Like, for example, at Texas 2K, we almost had me, you, Sean, and Caleb. That would have been a great recap episode. We just never got to it because Texas 2K, like, everything went wrong.
What's intense too, like, even just attending these events like we do, where, part of our job too is to be socializing, right? We need to be out meeting people, doing stuff. Well, sometimes it takes you late into the night, and then you're sleeping in just a little bit in the morning. Texas 2K is another animal. You're actually going to bed at like 5, 6 o'clock, sleeping for a few hours, getting up at 9, 10 o'clock, and then going out for the night stuff. It's a lot on a person, and I'm older than all of you guys, so it's a little rough on me, but it's
hey
part
man,
of the
I turned
gig.
25. I feel it now. Like a light switch.
Yeah. So it's hard to make time for that stuff when you're attending an event, because I that was going to be one of my things that I brought up in, you said the stuff that you've learned. I've learned that I maybe need to not go as ham when we go out to do these things, because sometimes we're doing podcasts and I'm a little under the weather when we're doing them the next day.
And that's where having a co-host definitely helps, because there has been times where, especially if you go to the Speed Summit or Power Cruise, like, oh, daddy, you definitely go a little ham sometimes, the 4 o'clock in the morning conversations are, but that's the other side of being a car enthusiast. And another thing that I've learned, right, is the scene. You get these people that say this car scene sucks, or the car scene's not the same. And I think the car scene is what you make of it. Mm-hmm. Too many people put themselves in situations where they're around the wrong people. And whether it's young, old, it happens all over the place. Like, just change who you hang around with, right? Yeah. Like, it's the classic saying, like, the 5 people you hang around the most will be your average or whatever. Like, you're going to be one of them, like, if you're around 5 cokeheads, you'll be the 6th, which, don't worry about it. But,
that might help if we did that.
Be the best podcaster ever.
Right.
No, but that's one thing that we've learned. It's like who you associate with. Like, I grew up Mopar, right? I was like, I used to see BMWs and be like, ugh. And then now, like, I really enjoy BMWs, but I also enjoy a Hellcat. Like, that's one of the other things that I've learned. It's like, man, I really do love all cars. Like, for example, when Austin took me for a ride in the Civic, this tin can little Coke, it made the same sounds as this Ghost can, right? Yeah. Like, it's rattly. But then you also jump into what's arguably $200,000 2,000 horsepower Viper build, and it's like, it's a different type of fun. Or you even jump into a road course car, or somebody just takes you for a rip. Like, you went for a ride. Was it with Dana or Piero?
Piero.
Right?
That was intense.
And that car makes how much horsepower do you say?
190, I think.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that story.
So we did a private track day down which is where all of us could afford to do a private track day, was down at I-29 Speedway just outside of Omaha. And it was fun. I had the GT500 there, so I probably had the most horsepower out of anybody that was there. But I wasn't pulling times like these little FRSs, making 190 horse. So I was like, you know what? Piero's we've had him on here before. I say we like he's never been when I've done it. But anyway, there's something to driver mod, right? I mean, I got in with Piero, and I thought that his mission was to flip the car upside down. I was convinced that that's what he was trying to do. We were hitting corners like crazy. We're coming in hot into corners and just barely touching the brakes and zipping around a corner. It was quite an eye-opening experience of where I probably will never be, but there's so much more potential for driver mod in that situation.
How different was your time than theirs?
It was actually pretty close. I mean, we were all within maybe 3-4 seconds, which is actually quite a bit in road course world, especially track that short. But it was, where I was making up with power, they were able to be more nimble in the corners.
What was your average time, or what was your time?
Oh,
was it in the 1 minute sort of span, or was it more?
No, it was more than that. I want to say that track, everything was like in the 130-ish range.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
So like I was probably in that like 135 in the morning. I think I was down to 135, 136. And then in the afternoon when things started to get hot, we were having trouble I couldn't get under 140.
Gotcha.
So, but those guys would be running like a 130, 132s.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and to be fair, like the GT500 is a track car, right?
Yep.
It is heavy, don't get me wrong, but also when you have 3 times the horsepower, it's just that is one thing that we've learned over the episodes is driver mod's huge.
Yep.
And
well, Jay got 2 seconds faster in my own car, which kind of pissed me off.
Oh, he drove your car?
Yeah, I let him drive it, and me sitting in the passenger seat.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he ripped it around, and it was that was also a little intense. So I think that helped me a little bit too, because I don't know my lines as well as everybody else. I'm not as big into iRacing as you guys are, so I think that I could definitely get some more training in that aspect.
I think, and that's one thing that we also learned, like sim racing. I didn't realize how many people had sims, by the way.
Right.
The more episodes we do, like I think it's like every 5th person has like a sim, and many of them are legit too. Like it definitely helps, whether it's for drifting or for road course. It seems like a lot of people just get to learn and practice their stuff. It is seat time. Like it's not the exact same. You don't have the G forces or whatever. Like, some people will argue about that until the cows come home. But nonetheless, like people have gotten so much. Like I've learned my lines. It helped a lot when I did my first track day with Alex, in your car. I did 8 laps in your car, and I had no idea what I was doing for times. Definitely nothing fast because I had a Jag in front of me that I wasn't getting a point by from. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You're my friend still.
He's lucky that he was pretty cool. Otherwise,
he was a cool dude. He was a cool dude.
Awesome.
It's just that I believe he had an instructor. I was just waiting for a point by. I'm like, dude, I'm making like 250 horsepower. Let me get past you so I can enjoy the straights.
Yeah.
But then again, I also was not trying to fry your brakes that day because you were running a little low.
Yeah.
Prep is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Prep. We heard that countless times from people. Prepare. Yeah.
Even though you still, I guess that's part of preparing, right? I think at Power Cruise, I fixed more cars than I ever had to do anything to mine, or at least lended my tools to people enough to where they could fix their stuff. So I don't know. Whenever we go and we leave to something like that, I bring enough stuff to damn near swap out an engine. So,
yeah, I think that comes back to the community thing too, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's kind of willing to. I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people are willing to just take the shirt off their back to help you in this community, which is kind of crazy, right? Like I constantly, like even though I don't do a ton of stuff, like for example, Piero's one of those people. Like even though he gives me a hard time, sometimes that dude is always willing to help.
Yeah.
He's like, come on by the shop, do this, that. Like, same thing with like, you helping Jay, or it's just like people become more and more helpful. And that's definitely one thing I've noticed is like, I was a nobody when I came into this community. When I came in, what was it, 2018, spring of 2018, I believe it was. I was sitting in college. I had nothing to do. And the only thing I could do is when I go home on the weekends, because I didn't have my car on campus, I would go to car shows, right? Mm-hmm. And the origins of like Monoxide were literally just, I wanted to take phone pictures to try to get free tickets to the auto show, which I don't really go to anymore. I just don't really care. Or like, to like, like there was one guy I met, like he was a Mopar page, like he was getting access to like Dodge releases or whatever, like, and I was like, that'd be kind of cool. And all he does is take phone pictures sort of deal. And then eventually I started doing like actual photos. Somebody's listening to this and being like, oh, he's so scatterbrained. It's okay. We're just ranting today. But like, that's kind of how that all kind of began too. It was just starting to do random photos. Like, there was a whole thing I was going on there. I lost.
Well, so I know you said scatterbrain, but this is kind of a special episode, right? 100, that's a big achievement. And we both, when we were spitballing ideas for this, I'm surprised we haven't done something like this sooner, but you're going to get, it's just, what you got today is just Harris and I bullshitting like we do when we're sitting in the car driving 5 hours to these events.
And I think we will do more of this sort of stuff, or maybe we'll get like a separate series. Because at the end of the day, like, you will also kind of want to bring value to the listener too.
Yep.
And granted, I think there's some in here too. I think it's somewhat entertaining. I don't know. Time to time, I think we say. The thing is, man, is I hope I never change in the regard where I say just off the wall bullshit. I think that definitely keeps things fresh. Like I remember one time I brought up Jimmy John's or whatever, and one of our listeners is like, "Yeah, I was kind of just spacing out, just kind of hitting a workflow." And then I heard Jimmy John's. I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm hungry." So I think that kind of works to that regard. Let's see, what else do we have some for lessons? Dude.
There you go, Jimmy John's. We need a sponsor.
Oh, dude, I would love Jimmy John's as a sponsor. Turkey Club, extra turkey. Dude, when we started doing the pick 3, which was courtesy of Charles, I think you met Charles on one of the Venom rallies back in the day from Colorado. When he came onto the Texas 2K episode, I think that was episode 11 or 12, it just kind of came up at the end of the episode. Like, it was actually initially supposed to be a pick 5 cars. Like, trailer rig and all this stuff, and we narrowed it down to 3, and that was the first episode. We had 5 of us say our pick 3, daily track show car. Some dudes just want a truck.
Yeah.
That's one of the most common things. Like, sometimes we'll get these off the wall things like, oh, I want a Koenigsegg for a daily. Almost everybody that we talk to that's like a shop owner wants a truck. They don't even care what truck.
Well, you need to, I don't want to say like true car guys, but some of the more hardcore ones, like where I've got a trailer hooked to my truck 90% of the time. And I'm hauling cars, moving shit, buying stuff, getting stuff. I mean, I couldn't imagine trying to put a hitch on the GT500 and go around and try and pick cars up. So you got to have that.
That would be actually a pretty cool like drag and drive style car. So I had a really crazy idea. I was running by a few people a few months ago. And a lot of them told me I'm an idiot, which is, it's okay. Hey, you know what? If 1 in 200's got to work, right?
Yeah.
1 in 200's got to be gold. But like I was throwing around the idea like, oh man, I really wanted like a C606. I'll throw on a hitch on it and I'll get like a small little like camper or whatever. Like that's like barely able to like tow it because, obviously weight is a problem when it comes to towing.
Yeah.
But I feel like the 500 being as heavy as it is, I can get a bigger camper. So.
The only thing would be the limitation. I mean, obviously it's the same motor they put in the Raptor R, and if you have a regular Mustang, you've got the same motor they got in the F-150, but you'd be better off with a Mustang because it has either a 6R80 or a 10R80, so you're looking at better transmission option. So the GT500, the only thing that would scare me with towing something would be how well is that dual clutch going to hold up?
Yeah, yeah.
With that extra weight behind it. But Mike Roush, sitting there with an F-150 6R80 transmission. He's got a truck transmission already, so let's talk to him about putting a hitch on.
Dude, I really am. I watched another video the other day about the F-150s, with the 5.0, the single cabs. I'm like, man, that really is. It is the American GTR.
They're selling like hotcakes right now.
Dude, I can't wait for them to start hitting the used market for cheaper and cheaper. Mm-hmm. That would be a very cool car or truck, whatever. That would, don't be surprised if you see me in one of those in a year or two, because like, it's just, it ticks all the right boxes.
Yep.
And there's a lot of cars that we've learned about that just are just cooler than we expected, right? Like, oh man, you thought this thing was dumb. Well, actually, you're able to do this, this, and this. And it's like, what? So.
They say there's an ass for every seat, right? as we've been going through this, I don't think there's a car out there that somebody hasn't modified or done something to. I mean, we've come across so many platforms. We talked about the surprise Ecotech stuff the other day. No clue that was a thing that people were doing. Maybe it's just him.
No, well, then
I know it's not.
You also look at the guy from the Ultimate Streetcar Challenge. Like that dude, I think that dude still had the Ecotech in that cone bolt.
Oh yeah, he did.
Was it still an Ecotech?
I think so.
That dude just got first place somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, goddamn, like it is a pretty cool road course car.
Well, and then the Yaris stuff that I didn't know was a thing either that we were talking to Aaron about.
Or was it Aaron? Or no, we were talking to
Well, what's the thing that Aaron had that picture of on his wall in there? Wasn't that a Yaris?
that is actually kind of funny because in the next episode, which we're yet to drop with the High Performance Academy, we also talked briefly about it. Like,
Yeah.
those 3-cylinders. Actually, no, that one wasn't a 3-cylinder. That was before they did the 3-cylinder stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's right. Yeah, the one that they had, the Nth Moto Yaris.
Yeah.
Such a weird, interesting. I never would have expected, but that's the thing. You look at some of these shop owners, like they've started with some weird platforms at times too.
Yep.
You know, it's not always like what they're doing today. Like they started doing something way back in the day, just out of either necessity or for passion. Because there's some guys that just did it for necessity, right? Like, oh, I got this sports car when I was 18, and then it was a bad choice, but I had to fix it, and then I, eventually wanted more power. And dude, we've heard the same stories so many times. One thing I've learned is, or another thing I've learned, these DSM guys are gluttons for punishment. Like, I don't know, every DSM guy that we've had on the podcast is like, yeah, they're super fun, they're super fast. Man, they're hard to work on, or not hard to work on. They're hard to make live or whatever. I don't know.
Well, I see these Evo guys seem to still have their stuff broke all the time too. I mean, I'm sure it's a great platform and it makes tons of power and they're really fun, but I feel like Trey had his on a trailer not that long ago. Piero seems to always say he's bringing his and never shows up with it.
But you also have to look at what the application is too, right? For example, like that's another thing. You have to look at applications all the time. Like Trey's Evo is no slouch. Like that was a stock transmission he had in there that he was running to the ragged edge. Like he knew it was going to fail at some point, right? And you see that a lot. Like a lot of people will just, let's just run this stock thing, and when it goes, and then we'll go get a sequential or something like that. Or like, hey, will you run this used turbo because I can just get another used one for cheaper? Like I'd rather just do 6 used turbos. Like for example, dude, the stock turbo that's supposed to be in my car here, I can get it for $75 off Marketplace.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My brother's like, dude, because like some people have asked me to revert it to stock if I do sell it. I'm like, no, I don't want to do the work because then I have to go take it, get it retuned, all that. Pass. And then I could sell my stock turbo for or not my current turbo for $300. It's like you see those applications where you can get a stock one or a cheap one or a used one for pennies on the dollar. So but then when it blows, it blows.
Right.
So I don't know, especially, the amount of anti-lag I've done on this one, I wouldn't recommend it.
It's for sale, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know if any listeners are buying it. But that's the thing. Like when you look at OEM stuff, when it's within its specifications, it's really not that bad. Like I'm not pushing a crazy ton of power out of this car.
And like you said, it's your only mode of transportation. So I've seen you get crazy with it, but you're not beating on it that bad.
It is up there in miles, right? It's like 93,000 miles. And obviously we have our private lumberjack rally, which is what it's called, coming up next month, which is just between friends. But the first time we did that, I was a solo driver. That happened after I canceled my Whiplash rally, or my second one for that year, because I was like, I'm about to throw my entire life away by losing another 20 grand or 30 grand on this upcoming one. Because if I couldn't sell the tickets, like I was cooked, know, because like you have to prepay everything, all that stuff or whatever. It's like, yeah, let's just take the loss here instead of using Peter to pay Paul sort of deal. I was like, let's not. But that first one, like I was up. Let's rephrase this. I was right on Mark's bumper.
Yeah.
Everybody can figure out what I was going to say there. But like, I was like, he couldn't even see the white of my car. All he saw was this black windshield. So it just because I was just so far, because I would dive bomb into corners, and I drove this car hard for that year. But now it's like, all right, now I still have to remember it's a daily, and I don't have a day job. Every dime that I make off this, I invest back into it. Like, for example, the camera that we're using for your beautiful face today. Like, it definitely that has been a fun 60,000 miles, and I thank Kyle from Hardway Learning every day for selling me the car for inflated COVID pricing. Damn it. It's okay. We're not on that much underwater. But
well, that goes to show a true, like, what this car stuff can do to people. It's not a cheap passion by any means. Even if you're not modifying your car, you're buying something that depreciates in value. But there was tons of cars selling when they were $10,000-$20,000 over what they should have been during COVID, and it was not slowing down. Now maybe that hurts a little bit for some people, but
reality is gonna hit a lot of people here in the next couple of years, because like I think we're probably at like 1 or 2 years of like the prices going down. When people start moving those cars in the next 2 or 3 years, and well, actually, hopefully loans will be paid off at that point, but there's going to be a lot of people underwater. Like, I have a cheap car. Imagine somebody that financed the Porsche at peak pricing 2 years ago. It's like, uh-oh.
Or bought a GT500 at $140K because you wanted it that bad. Now they're track pack cars that are just barely over 100 if they got low miles on them.
Honestly, you GT500 and Z06 guys are a problem on the track.
Yeah.
Like, you're not too bad, but man, whenever you go to like these events like Power Cruise, especially, like, it gets close sometimes. You know? I don't know how much more I want to say on that.
Yeah. Well, this other thing, you touched on it earlier too about people giving each other a hard time, but still being there to help out, right? So I love giving GM guys shit. I also am very deep in the Ford. I mean, my freaking track go-kart or golf cart is built by Ford.
Why didn't we put the Think in the background?
I don't know. We should have. It's there. I should at least got that picture. It's inside hanging on the wall. I could have put it right.
Did you guys hang it up finally?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But so got a pretty hardcore passion for a certain automaker, but I still really like everything. And as much as I hate to admit it, there's some cool Chevys out there, but if you're not giving each other a hard time too, what's the point?
Well, you were also shopping for G80s or checking them out.
I really like them.
It is a great platform right now. I think we've talked to a lot of people, and the S58, like, I don't think there's anybody that said anything bad about them yet. I really don't think so. Like, if you, for example, like, oh, well, this motor does this. I haven't heard anything bad about S58s yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just because I'm in my own little bubble, my own cult.
They are fairly new, but still, that seems like a way over-engineered. Mm-hmm. It's our current day 2JZ, I think.
I think also in the 100 episodes of this, I think we've learned that people aren't as opposed to EVs as we thought. And by that,
I've been on the track with several of them.
I shouldn't even say EVs. I should say hybrids, right? I feel like some people are like, EVs. But I think a lot of people are like, well, I could kind of see the benefits to hybrid. And that's usually where the conversation kind of goes, right? It's like, they're not like, I want a hybrid, but I could see the value in it. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in the next few years. I think a lot more people are on board with hybrids out of everybody we've talked to. Now, most people would still prefer their ICEs, but they can definitely respect the guy next to them that has a hybrid. And I think as more modding comes, or the ability to mod those platforms comes, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, again, I think you can poke fun back and forth, but at the same time, we all have a passion for cars in general. So it's, as much as we like to talk shit about EVs, I mean, there's still plenty of them. It's a go nowhere situation, I think. But, Optima Streetcar, we were on track with, what was that Tesla Plaid?
I think it was a Plaid.
Yeah,
that thing was
he was
fast.
getting crazy numbers, and that was insane to see that thing on the track.
He's traveling the country, too.
Yeah, it just goes by, makes no noise, but still pulling the same times as everybody
else. You mean
else.
no noise like Caleb's twin-turbo Z06? Yeah. I've never heard a Z06 that quiet.
It's pretty quiet.
Yeah, I literally, I had the window rolled up in the GTR, and I'm like, it made a noise.
Well, it's really quiet if you consider the fact that it is not running more than it is running.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like, it's usually broken.
Oh, yeah. It's been quiet most of its life. Well, no, it wasn't broken. Caleb. It was a work in progress. But
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I'm excited to see that ZR1. I think we're still going to try to go to Ice Cream Cruise.
Are you?
I think so. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still down for that. We got to see what's going on.
There's just so much going on in September, and the upcoming episodes that we have are going to be really, really cool. Oh man, there's just so much coming up.
Well, right now we're in planning mode for SEMA, right? So sounds like it's far away, but it's really not.
I never would have expected, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, or let's go maybe 7, because that was before I really got into the car community. If I would have been able to go to SEMA of my own volition, like not having to go with someone, I never would have imagined it. I'd be like, well, what would I be doing? I'd have a microphone and just talk.
Right.
Like I never would have guessed that that long ago. And honestly, dude, I've been around so many car enthusiasts again in these episodes. And it's like we've talked to everybody from drag racers to road course guys to people who just do rallies or run rallies. Like, for example, Asa, who just took over Crown Rally, which is crazy, by the way.
Yeah, that's an announcement. I was like, whoa, what the hell?
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people are kind of cut from the same cloth. It really, I don't think there was any time where we were just like, oh, this guy's not a car guy. Well, actually, I take that back. There's been a handful of times it's like, oh, you just like nice things. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But that's okay too, right? Like it is still an appreciation. Somebody had to buy the G80 M3 brand new so you could get it used and modify the shit out of it, or, if we go back to F80s and E36s and whatever. I don't know why I'm on a Beamer kick at the moment, but.
Well, I was going to bring up when you started talking about G80s, that one of the things that turns me off on them is they do just look like a sedan, BMW. It's great, but it doesn't have, it's super awesome performance-wise, but this still just doesn't have, they look great, I guess. But it doesn't really matter when you're out with Sean and myself and all these other cool cars, and then Jay rolls up with his FD RX-7, and everybody flocks to that thing. That really just, not that they're not a great car, but I was like, this thing was leaking oil all over the place. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, man. I'm just kind of going through the episodes here. And there's a number of people that we've had back on several times. I think Michael Peterson still holds the record. I think he's currently at 4 or 5, maybe.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, it can't be 5.
Well,
do you count the
10 minutes?
Stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. We had a good bit of drifting guys on. Dude, there's some people that will not let anything stop them.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Because I'm currently editing the Max Odegaard highlights. You just got to start, man. You just got to do it. Whether it's learning how to weld or just, do basic or just fab work in general, or whether it's working on your own car, just start somewhere. And I think nowadays you kind of don't have too much of an excuse because 20 years ago, it was just forums, right?
Yeah.
Now you can Google anything. You can even ask ChatGPT, hey, what are some resources I could start looking into? So you don't even have to Google it, right? You could just ask ChatGPT what to Google. Right?
Yeah.
Like what are some questions? That's the thing. Most people don't even know what questions to ask. And I think if you start asking the right questions, you can start getting a lot more right answers.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask questions too. I've been talking to people that I have no idea what they've got going on, and they're glad to answer questions.
Yeah, and I don't think people are. The thing is, when you ask in a forum or like a Facebook group,
that's a whole nother thing.
It's tough, but if you take someone aside,
yeah,
if you just shoot someone a DM directly, it might take them a while to see it. Sometimes people are busy, but they'll get back to you. But you also have to put the effort in. Max brought that up in his episode as well. It's like you can ask me the question, but I want you actually listening for the answer.
Yeah,
right. Because some people will ask a question and then fizzle out. Right. It's like you want to actually be there to actually learn something. And I think a lot of people are willing to share their knowledge for the most part.
Yeah, I've never really met a car guy that wasn't willing to chat. Yeah, right. And even if you do know or not know what you've got going on, a lot of guys still drop their stuff at a shop, but I find myself in that camp a lot more as of late. Just got this car back from Dave.
Dave?
Yeah, Dave.
Inside joke.
Yeah.
The thing is, whenever I tell that story of what happened at that first Speed Summit about the Dave, people are like, it's not that. They're like, huh?
It wasn't to be their situation.
You had to be there. You had to be as shit-faced as we were, which I only drink like 4 times a year. Like, and it's usually with you at events. Or like, it's the same, like the other way around, by the way. Because like, you gave me shit for that too. You're like, you make me sound like an alcoholic. I only drink when at events too.
Yeah.
So that's super funny, man. And there's so many things. Like I came into this not knowing anything technically, and I've kind of taken an approach, especially in the last 20 episodes, of just seeking knowledge. And I think a lot of people should do that as well. Like some of the best resources that I've had, for example, Driving for Answers was a great channel because there's a lot of basics to this stuff that I did not know.
Yep.
There was a lot of episodes where I kind of just had to hope I'm asking the right questions, and I was generally pretty good at it. There was a little bit of there was a lot of hoping on some episodes. But honestly, doing what we do is not that hard. It's not hard to get people to talk about themselves.
Yep.
As long as you can keep it on track somewhat and ask half decent questions with great follow-ups, I don't think it's too bad. But learning how a lot of this stuff works has definitely made, I think, the podcast better in the last 20 episodes.
Yeah. Well, we've had some great guests. I mean, it's
and that's not taking away from the earlier guests, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if we, like, for example, we're gonna get like Jason Anderson back on in the future. I'll be honest with you, I had no idea how to fuck heads worked and valve trains and all that stuff on episode 67. A lot of people said it was a great episode, but I think coming back now to it, I think we'll be able to have better conversations with some of our earlier guests.
Well, you're doing a very good job of educating yourself too. I know you say that like you don't have a technical whatever, but I see you watching a lot. Well, I don't see you. I'm not at home watching you watch videos, but
good luck getting you to be a big ladder.
Yeah, you've been doing research before we have guests. Watching videos, tutorial stuff to help educate yourself a little bit on how all this crap works.
Yeah, and to that point, it's like. We're dropping the episode with HPA just before. It's going to be the episode right before this one, I believe. But like High Performance Academy, it's like that's great from beginners to the most advanced stuff. And you kind of started looking at their stuff, but like, I got a nice base knowledge from Driving for Answers because he just delivers it so well. And the thing is since I think he's Eastern European, he speaks English a little bit slower. And I think that's why I'm able to absorb it so much better. The bird almost flew in here. Squirrel. I don't think you understand. It passed the garage door. And it's like, oh, they're filming. I should get out.
Well, we're not usually out we're kind of in the wilderness here. We got trees and stuff around here.
Yeah. But like it just broke it down in such a way slowly enough to where I could understand. It was just very digestible. Same thing with High Performance Academy is great. 337 Speed's another one that is kind of like, I don't want to say surface level, but it's technical, but it's more of like a holistic approach. It depends on what you watch, but those three are great. I'm sure there's another one in there that I'm missing, but like there's a lot of stuff out there where you can learn.
Oh yeah,
for free.
That's where I find a lot of the stuff. First of all, the whole YouTube mechanic thing, that's got to be pretty damn common nowadays. I mean, that was a kind of a joke in the beginning, but I go there all the time to figure out stuff. I just did a sea pump in this boat over here, and I had to look in on which way I had to put the impeller in to make sure the water wasn't pumping backwards.
Yeah, and I think you just have to have that thirst to or not thirst. You need to put the pride down sometimes.
Yeah,
because that's another thing for me. It's like, oh man, I gotta learn this. It's like, oh man, like that was one thing I definitely had to get over for sure. Yeah. Man, we've had a lot of cool builds on here too, man. Like a lot of weird swaps, and like for example, the RB swap GTO. That was a cool episode. And then he threw a diesel in the was it a Tempest? I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
Just various things. Like I think people have a lot of cool ideas, and they're willing to take a swing at the fences. Just figure it out along the way.
I always admire because I've built some stuff. And I know, like, man, that took forever. It was a lot of work. It was days of me bitching at myself, things like that. So whenever somebody in there has done something like that, I automatically have some respect for the fact that they sat down and decided to just pull the trigger on it and do it, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, you definitely sign up for projects that are a lot longer than you expect. Like, there's cars that have been on jack stands for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. So we're if anybody
just looking in your garage.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't noticed, or if we haven't talked about it, we're actually at my shop right now. It is a cluttered mess, as it is always, because I'm always constantly go, and I've got shit in and out of here all the time. But there's a 93 Cobra back there that is basically just a shelf that's gonna in a middle of a Coyote swap build. So it happens. You get into stuff and you get busy, and projects go to the side and it gets rough.
I'm just scrolling through episodes here, just trying to figure out.
No, I get it. You're ignoring me.
I'm ignoring you. No. Yeah. It's like kind of like, it's like, oh, shut up. I'm talking to someone right now.
Yeah.
I think our passion's here to stay. It does suck. Like I'm thinking about the Michael Morgan episode 63, right? We're thinking about a lot of tracks are shutting down and it's so difficult to open new ones.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, there is, a number of drag strips that have been opening up and a handful of road courses around the country, but I think for the most part, I think our passion's here to stay. I don't think we may lose a few tracks here and there and gain others, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think, like you said, we're gaining some. There's some, such a crazy, we have some pretty good ones close to us. I was having this conversation with somebody, and I know there's areas that have good tracks. I feel like if you go to that just north of Florida, down in that area there, they've got some pretty good stuff close by. But we're not that far from Road America, Gingerman,
Brainerd, of course.
Brainerd is great. Even the one that I went to, the I-29 Speedway, that's 5-hour trek, which is also Road America, but their road course was a little lacking. They have a very nice drag strip. Obviously, they host the ice cream cruise, so that's probably a pretty big deal for them. It probably is what pays for that entire track throughout the whole entire year. But I wish they'd take better care of their road course.
Yeah, and I think that's just part of it. it's expensive too. I think a lot of people want the cheap events. They're not there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna get these, $50, $75 tickets. Like for example, when we did Venom Rally, the first one out to Colorado, we were sharing the track day with somebody else, and they didn't even charge us for the day. They charged us $75 a car.
Oh, really?
That's what it was, right? And then this was beginning of COVID, right? And what's it called? Hotels were fire sales. I think we were paying maybe $100 a night or something like that. And then obviously we had the Fogo de Chao dinner. That was expensive. But like the dinner itself was like $50 because they have a minimum. You know how some of these restaurants work, which we negotiate. But like that was like a $650 rally. You're never gonna see a rally of that quality for that cheap again.
No,
it's just not gonna happen.
No, we're going on. We have officially signed up for River Valley Road Rally here in middle October. And speaking of Michael Morgan, we're going to be at US Air.
Oh, cool.
Track there on Friday, so that'll be interesting. It's kind of a more smaller track, so I'm going to see how the car does. But I've already been chatting with Michael Morgan about it a little bit. He'll be there.
Mm-hmm. If you weren't a Ford guy, what would you be?
Ooh. I did like BMWs there for a while. When I first met my wife, I was looking at 3 Series, like mid-90s 3 Series BMWs. I liked those. I don't know. I would like to say, I always tell people second, I'm a Mopar guy. I like what they're doing. I don't like how complacent they get. They kind of get a platform, and yeah, it does great, but then they just beat it to death.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Dodge Ram that like 90s version that was not, the transmission went out no matter what. It wasn't a fact that you could ever get one to live. But that truck was from like 1990 something all the way to 2005 or something when they changed that body style. The Challenger hasn't changed in damn near a decade and a half.
It's got flares. But no, like you look at looks wise, like it definitely hasn't changed a ton.
Yeah.
And if you compare a 65 Mustang to yours, it's a very, very different car.
Yep.
Like, even though I was going to say, well, Mustang's been around for 60 years, but it has changed drastically every single time. Now, granted, this new S650, it doesn't look too terribly different, but I think it does. I think it's got, it holds its own so far.
So they'll rock that one for another 4 or 5 years, though, and then they'll refresh totally. So they'll do like an iteration. So the SN95 Mustang went from 94 to 97, and then in 1998 it refreshed as the new Edge Mustang, but technically still an SN95. Even though those cars look pretty different, they're still the same underneath. So the similar thing is going on with the S650. It's the same underneath. But that Fox body platform went from 1979 to 2004. So if the car changed its looks wise, but underneath they were the same.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so excited for the refresh or the new Charger. Looks wise, I'm still not sold. We'll see what the aftermarket does for it, because it's only the rear end bothers me the most on that car, but we'll see what happens. But like, it's not gonna have that 25-year-old chassis or whatever the hell it was, maybe even from the 90s or whatever, because like that's what made those cars heavy. Like for a while I was doing the math on what it would take to make it a tube chassis car. Like imagine like a 3,300 horsepower car with, or not horsepower, sorry, 3,300 pound car with a red-eye motor.
Yeah,
that would be a rocket ship, dude. Like, so I don't know. Yeah, I get out these off the cuff ideas because of these people we have on here, but.
Well, I appreciate their passion for throwing that Hellcat motor in about everything and anything they make. So I think that's cool. I like that.
They made a cool motor, and it's like you guys put it in your stupid truck too. Like, it's like, imagine you guys never did minivans, did you?
What I like about Ford though is they give you, and Dodge probably does too a little bit, but Ford, they give you that enthusiast platform to work around, right? They give you something. It's like when you buy a Harley, you don't get any chrome with it. They leave that up to you, right? So you get this car, which is great for boost, and then you put your supercharger on it. You do. There's a lot there. From what I understand with the Dodge stuff is once you start playing with it, then you got to start, things get a little hairy there, right? They get expensive. You got to start going into the motor a little more early than you would with other platforms. They took everything to the ragged edge instead of leaving room for people to play with.
I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that we've learned as well, by the way, is when a lot of platforms go tit for tat. Like, all right, it is cheaper to do a Daza up until this horsepower level, but it's cheaper to do an S58 up until this level. And then we kind of learn when you get to like that 1,500 horsepower or even the 2,000 horsepower range, it's all expensive.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it might vary a little bit, but you're still, at a certain point, a 6-figure build is a 6-figure build. You start thinking, oh, bill it this, bill it that, blah, 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 blah. And it's isn't necessarily always the exact same price. Definitely not. But when you're trying to make a car that lives at a certain power level, it does start to be pretty similar across most platforms.
Yeah.
So.
But I don't know. That's such a weird, as I've been doing this more and we've been getting people on, I find that when we have guests on, I hit Marketplace immediately afterwards, be like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to do this, I don't know. I just, I've become more of an all-around car person as we've been doing this. I obviously have my passion for something, but it's... Yeah,
if we look at my Facebook Marketplace here, we got a 2013 ZR1. Then we have a 2014 Mustang. Hold on. Is that a glass roof car? Hold on.
Uh-oh. That one sold, by the way.
Fully optioned, including glass roof. We may have found you a car.
Ooh, mine's got Audi R8s on it right
it's
now.
6,000 miles, but they're asking 67,000.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. You can haggle with the guy.
No.
Sometimes you get these. That's so funny because like, okay, if anybody can help Dan, we're trying to find a deal for a glass roof car that's a 2014 or 13 GT500. But no, like you have such a variety on your Facebook Marketplace now. Like it's. I think we've definitely grown as overall car enthusiasts, and I think we are starting to get a little long in the tooth on this episode, unless there's anything else you think we should kind of bring up.
I think that just to play off of where we're just at now, I would like to go something more exotic, I think, now that I've been messing around with some of this stuff, I've never experienced that. So I also have never driven a GTR. I've never driven, not that those are exotic, but a Lambo of any kind or any of that stuff. I would like to experience that once. After having a R8 in my garage all last weekend, working on it, thinking that's not too bad to wrench on.
It's not so super.
Yeah. Well, it's not that super, but it's still pretty freaking cool, right? So I'd like to.
No, I mean, just because it's always broken.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've also learned about supercars.
Yeah, dude, there's just some platforms. Like, again, no platform is bulletproof.
Yeah. Well, and then to find out, like, if you have a supercar, when it hits 40, 50,000 miles, it's done. Like, to be honest with you, most of them, when they're into that, they're high mileage cars. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, but it's like when you think about it, it depends how thrashed it's been too. That's one thing that we've also learned. It's like, dude, drive your car. If it sits, it's gonna rot. Like, for example, you brought up, like, it doesn't matter if it's garage kept. You're mentioning that, like, even concrete sweats.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's gonna be episode 101. You'll see that all about after this. And we've had such a wide variety of people. and it's just going to keep getting wider. I think I never would have, like, a year ago was when I first got monetized on TikTok, and I made 3 cents, and I'm like, awesome, I'm rich. Not really, 3 cents, in like one day. But
I think I remember having that conversation with you.
yeah, but like, that was shortly after I lost my job, right? Last June, not last June, but you're almost 13 months ago, 14 months ago. Like, I was just going to basically ride it out as long as I could, and then eventually probably end up back at a day job, whether that was selling cars. But the ultimate goal was to always come back to this, whether it was on the side. I think one piece of advice I can give to a lot of people is you just got to swing.
Yeah.
Obviously I have certain things that have allowed me to have a little bit more comfort in doing this, but not to say that, I mean, sacrifice is like kind of a weird thing, but there's definitely a handful of ones where it's like, oh man, if I just went this other route, it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah.
I'm taking a big risk doing this sort of deal, and it's kind of nice to see this risk panning out. Because for a while there, I mean, you kind of go from wanting to give up every day to maybe every third day to every other week. And now it's like, all right, cool. Now we're just down to giving up once a month, maybe twice. There's been so many times where I've been like overdraft, or like, oh, I have to move money around, or, I don't like asking, dude, the last people, I don't like asking for money. I don't want to be in debt to someone. I learned that lesson from my dad very early on. Like, I don't want to owe anyone favors. If you ever buy me lunch and you bring it up again, like I bought you lunch that one time, I will pay you double and you will never hear from me again.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the way that's the way I operate, right? I told someone that last week. They're like, whoa, I didn't mean it that way. I'm like, don't make it mean that way. And that's just, the way I operate, right? Like, I would rather put myself at a disadvantage just because I want to grow something cool here, and I think I definitely have. And as many times as I wanted to give up, it's like, man, I've gotten through this, and this before. I think on the other side of this, I think we'll be okay. We just have to think a little differently. And I think one of the biggest resources that I had in the past year, obviously, like, I kind of went down a Goggins rabbit hole. I read both of his book. I got fired up for a little while there, and that was cool. That got me through about 2 or 3 months. But I think somebody that gave me a lot of resources was like Alex Hormozi. Huge. He owns acquisition.com. Big resource for any business owner. I think every business owner of some caliber should be listening to his stuff, because it's a matter of marketing, right? The job I was fired from, like, they made me read a book called They Ask You Answer before I started. And that book was a big change for me as well. And I think everybody should read that one too, because first of all, it's a simple read. Like, the guy's a pool guy. It's not like he wrote anything revolutionary with big words, but between that and, Alex Hormozi and They Ask You Answer, it's like, I've learned so much about how to operate this as a business, and I have to treat it that way because that's the only way it'll survive. But I know I'm rambling at this point, but there's just so much to recap into last year, and so many times where you just kind of want to give up, or you want to move on from something, and you're just like, you know what, man? Like, I just got to seek some more resources. I found so much free knowledge out there, sometimes by luck, sometimes at the right time, but I think so much of it is just like the more doors you knock on, and as much as I hate using roofing references, the more doors you knock on, the more roofs you're going to get. And by the way, all the roofers that I know, man, they're hard workers.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about the guys that are actually up on the roof, but like even the guys that are just doing the sales side. Because like it takes a lot to do what they do and just get spit in the face every day.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm one of the guys that'll spit in their face. But like, I don't think... If there's one lesson that anybody that takes away from this, that if you made it this far in the episode, which bless your heart, is you're not going to be good at something until you do it 100 times.
Oh, you got to put yourself out there too. I had saw something from Joe Rogan had put a quote out there that when you choose to stay home or not go out or do something, and not necessarily like going out to party or whatever, but if you're like, it's just easier for me to stay here than to go to this event or do this or whatever, if you're not pushing yourself constantly and making yourself, the more uncomfortable you are and putting yourself into that situation, the more your brain builds and God, really fucking this up.
No, it's okay because like
it's you got to get outside your comfort zone and push yourself if you want to achieve some of this stuff.
And there's a scientific answer for that, by the way.
Yeah.
Another great one is Andrew Huberman Labs. There's actually an episode, and again, tangent, but there's an episode where he talks about your brain, right? Like the more you will literally live longer if you keep pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, maybe that's the quote that I saw.
It might have been.
Yeah, because that sounded very similar.
Because, like, think of it this way. How many guys just croak after they retire?
Mm-hmm.
They lose their purpose. They've been working on this for 40, 50 years. You need purpose. You need something that challenges you every day. And this is a fucking challenge, I'll tell you that much. But I'm also not at risk of croaking anytime soon, I hope. But no, 100 episodes. I always said this thing will take off by 100 episodes. And like a light switch, you know, but I was constantly pushing on innovating something. Every 5 to 10 episodes, I was buying something new because I'm able to upgrade this or that. It's the incremental improvements. If you go back to our early episodes, the first 7 or 8 did not have cameras, even though half the time we said, hey, we're recording now, and then it croaks. And then we got things that optimized workflow. By the way, this isn't like the main lesson. Again, stick to like, do it 100 times, then you can make a judgment on whether you're good at it. But another thing is, too many people don't value their own time. Yeah. Spend a little extra money to make your life easier. If you can do this thing twice as fast, you can make up the extra money you spend. I financed this MacBook right here, right? I'm paying $200 a month. I hate financing stuff like that. I'd rather just buy it cash, be done with it. But it was 0%, so it's okay. But it has made my life monumentally easier. You're an Android guy. I'm sure you guys have some sort of weird thing for that too. But like being able to airdrop and not have to do things has made me so much faster at this. Look for tools that make your life easier. Spend a little bit of extra money up front to make you more efficient at something, as difficult as it may be. Like Max talked about on his episode 96, like I'd rather learn how to do something, spend $1,000 to do something that I could have paid $150 for, but now I could do it anytime. Same thing with car guys, right? If you're able to work on your own car and if you learn it, maybe you don't have to take it as the shop. It'll be a little bit to get your tools up front, but now you can do it yourself. Same thing applies. But anyways, I'm going to keep going on tangents here. I think the caffeine's waking me up a little bit more. But
just to touch back on that whole putting yourself out there thing, right, and make yourself uncomfortable, we're doing this. It may seem like we've got our shit together and we're doing this, but if you think that Harris and I aren't awkward and uncomfortable when we're at SEMA or at these events and meeting some of these big people and doing all this stuff, like we're just fumbling idiots just like everybody else. So
especially at events, dude. Events are the hardest thing because we work around our guest schedule and I don't foresee that changing often because people are competing or they have their businesses to tend to or whatever. It's very difficult to crank out a bunch of stuff at an event. Like, for example, Texas 2K. Granted, Texas 2K was a weird one because whatever, but for a number of reasons, we'll be more prepared this following year for sure. But it's definitely difficult. It's not like, and like I have my inbox full of people, because that's the other thing. I also have to think of you guys, the audience. I have to think of what's going to be entertaining or interesting, because I have to respect your time. You guys can choose 100. We were 42 yesterday, the 42nd biggest automotive podcast. That's the biggest I've ever seen us. You know what that means? There's 41 other people ahead of us that you could also choose. You could choose Smoking Tire, Pass Gas, Tuned In from HPA. There's so many options. Yeah. So I have to respect the time of you guys to choose guests who I think will be a good time too, or references are huge too. I love when people refer people to us because that means they've earned somebody's respect of someone I respect. Yep. So that's huge too. I don't know. I'm so easy to set off on a rant.
I'm noticing.
I should have a private ranting podcast. I've thought about it. So many times. But I would get canceled so much quicker on that. But on that note, I think if you take anything away, do something a lot of times before you're going to suck. You're going to suck the first 10 of our episodes. Mm-hmm. Again, we're not talking about the guests. I'm talking about the production value. I got to make that clear. It's not you guys. It's not you. It's me. It was rough. And even the first 50 were different, and all the different backdrops and backgrounds and all the little audio mishaps we've had and all these little things. And I'm still learning. Like I have issues all the time. Mm-hmm. For example, yesterday the camera was crooked. I have to deal with the choices I had there. That's going to be a fun edit. But point being, whatever you do, just do it 1,000,000 times or 100 times. Give yourself a number, and if you're not good at it by that number, then you could be a quitter.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't. Dan, where can people find you?
You can find us at GunnItGarage or right here in my shop sometimes. Not nearly as much these days, but, farming out more work than I'd like to. But it happens. It's GunnItGarage with 2 N's, by the way, so you staring me down.
Yeah. Yeah, we finish each other's sandwiches. Yeah.
Ooh, that was good timing.
Yeah. As for me, guys, thank you so much for being a part of this journey. 100 episodes is huge. Most people don't get past 6. I think that's the 1%, might be 10 episodes nowadays.
Here's to renting out a big hall and throwing a big freaking party for 200, huh?
Yeah, we'll get there. That's not in the Monoxide budget. But at some point, I will throw some sort of rager or event or something. We'll figure out what that looks like, when, where, how. At some point, something like that will happen. The Monoxide World Tour will happen at some point. Mm-hmm. Let's start with stateside. But this dream, we will end up, like, for example, I had somebody that works for Mercedes, or not Mercedes, but like a lot of OEMs in Europe, right? Like, the owner of this crazy company or whatever reached out. I'm like, I don't do remote. In hindsight, episode 99 was remote, but that's only because they have a studio. They literally have a production team. Like, if anybody was going to fuck it up, it was going to be me. There's just so many things that can go wrong with that. And that it could have flowed better. But point being, it's like, we like doing this in person.
Yep.
We like, hearing, smelling, seeing everything inside. Like, when we got a tour of Nth Moto, first of all, I never expected to get a tour of that top secret facility in my life. Yeah. And I've known those guys for a few years, so that was pretty cool. But like, I do foresee this thing going to a international level at some point. We'll get there at some point. We're gonna work our way up the chain. We're gonna ask the CEOs of these conglomerates, like, why are you doing these stupid decisions? I will put them on the spot, but nonetheless, it's you guys that make this possible. When you share the show, every single time you share a highlight, the show, review it, all these things, they make an impact. So, as little as it may seem. So, thank you very much, everybody, for sticking around for 100 episodes. Thanks, Dan, for existing, and we'll see you all next time.